Welcome to the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC Fight Night 195, Ladd versus Dumont, also known as UFC Vegas 40. I'm your host, Ben Duffy of Sherdog.com, and with me, as always, is Keith Schillen, the executive producer of the Sherdog Radio Network and the creator and host of various shows for that network, including, of course, the Schillen and Duffy Show, which brings you the recaps after these events. I'm back after a week off. Feels great to be here. Hope you didn't miss me too badly. Keith, how was it holding down the fort for a week?
You know what? I'm glad you asked me that. It's much harder. So to your credit, the recap show is a lot easier to host than the preview show. And as soon as I did it live. I don't know if you know that. I did it live.
Yeah,
just because it's easier for me to record that way, the way my program's set up. And I don't have the editing skills you are, so I said, screw it, I'll just do it live, see if anybody listens. And there was actually, the chat was going pretty well. It was pretty cool. But the one thing right before I was about to go live, I went, oh my God, there's something that Ben does every week that I don't do, and that's he sets up the fights. You give the odds, you set up, this guy's on a 3-fight streak, this guy's on this guy. I didn't do any of that. And I was like, you can get a lot of credit for that because you give so much information before we even break down the styles of the fight, and, the X's and O's. It's hard, man. It's really hard to do that.
It takes some prep time, but I like to kind of set the plate, not just for you as you break down the fight, but for whoever's listening. I mean, they may not know the last time Danaa fought or, what Brandon Davis did before he got to the UFC. I just, like to set the table a little bit. I'm glad it's appreciated, and on the 1 week a year I'm not here, it doesn't hurt my feelings that people miss it. So
let me ask you this. The show, you were just talking off air, the show went great. Did any of the listeners show up? I know we didn't give them a lot of time.
Not that I saw, but the thing sold out a day or two out. So if they had tried to, they might not have been able to make it.
Like before we even announced, it was already sold. That's how popular you guys are. That is pretty cool that you guys haven't played in 20 years and you still sold out.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty good. Now, it was in Utah, so a lot of those band members had a lot of kids. So the venue started to fill up just with like their offspring. So oh man, but yeah, no, it's good to be back. It was good to see, a bunch of old friends and kind of hit my old stomping grounds. But I belong here in the year 2021 with my gray hair, and my sore back. So this card, man,
it's cool to get to go rewind for 20 years. And you know what? We got some fighters on this that can rewind a couple 20 years. Andrei Arlovski, Jim Miller.
Oof, it's serious. Like Andrei Arlovski literally debuted in the UFC over 20 years ago. That's unbelievable. Man, this card, I mean, you and I talk ahead of every single UFC card, and I think we're pretty honest about when, hey, this is a loaded card or this is a thin card, and we tend to shy away from superlatives or hyperbole whenever we can. And I'm always conscious of, I don't want to complain too hard about fights that I'm getting for free. Like this would have been a great problem to have in 2006. Oh my God, there's too many UFC events. Having said that, this probably is on paper the worst UFC card of the modern era. Modern era meaning the last 10 years.
Yeah, well, we've had some bad European cards and Asian cards and stuff like that, but I'm thinking, it's tough because I'm not Jay Petru where I remember these off the top of my head like that, but it's up there. Like when you look at the rankings, like what fight matters in the ranking, there's one, the main event.
And honestly, I mean, the main event, sure, it matters, but there are 0 fighters on this card who are ranked in the division in which they're actually competing on Saturday.
There you go. That's a good point. And I understand that we're living in a really weird world, and there's a lot of circumstances why the card is what it is. One, just the pure amount of fights that the UFC puts on. They put on, there was a time when we were watching a UFC card was once every 3 months, and you got excited. And it's funny how I've talked to people and I say, I have such an easier time remembering events from 25 years ago than I do from 25 days ago. And you're like, how could that be? Well, because like as soon as this card ends, as soon as we're done making these predictions, I'm already previewing the fights for next week. And then it's, there's times it's almost in my head, this event is over because I'm already ahead of previewing next week's, that before the event actually happens, I'm already thinking about, you know what I mean? Like I'm already, like almost like it already happened.
Yeah.
But back in the day, I'd have 3 months to get excited for insert whatever fight it was coming up. You know, the super tournament. You know, with the ultimate I should say, with Don Fry and Tank Abbott. Like I was excited for these. You know, Tank Abbott versus Vitor Belfort. I had 3 months in advance. That's not how it is. So one is the amount of fights. Another thing is with COVID. I mean, we got people dropping out because of COVID. I mean, we think about. Like, I'm not sure which card it is, but like Misha Tate was the main event. That fight fell out. Was it this?
That was this
It was
card.
this one.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
the
why
main event.
that's why Ladd and Dumont are the headliner.
But that wasn't even part B. Like that wasn't the backup plan. The backup plan was Holly Holm. Well, she fell out, and I think hers was an injury, but maybe it was COVID. I don't remember. But then you got injuries, and then also where we're in a weird predicament is we have 2 pay-per-views on. I shouldn't say pay-per-view, numbered UFC events back to back, which normally would be a pay-per-view. We have them back-to-back weeks, stacked. Both cards are very stacked. So when you stack a card like that, well, then there's not many leftovers. So just a little bit of everything. So, but you know what? As bad as I'm complaining, I still take bad at MMA than no MMA.
Absolutely.
Like we're not the ones who there's a lot of media members who complain and hope there's no event. Like that's not us.
No.
Like I'm still gonna watch every second of this fight and then talk about it 2 hours afterwards.
I'll be there. I'll see you. I'll see you Saturday night.
Yeah. Before we get into the card, can I complain about the main event for a second? My complaint is this: I understand the UFC was in a pinch. They had the Misha Tate fight fall through. They had to go to Plan B. Holly Holm was in it. Plan B falls through. They got to go to Plan C. My issue with the main event is that Aspen Ladd is getting rewarded for missing weight 2 weeks ago. Like she missed weight. She's forced to move up, but she went from, a main card fight to a main event. Like, I don't think a fighter who misses weight has really, if you haven't seen the clip, a really, really scary clip, shouldn't be rewarded, for botched weight cutting.
I'm with you on that. And it's not necessarily just out of a sense of, the world is unfair and she shouldn't be rewarded for failing to meet her professional responsibilities, even though I do wonder if Macy Chiasson was offered this fight.
I'm glad you said that because that was literally what I was going to say next. I'm like, I hope they gave Macy Chiasson the first shot at this. No, if Macy turned it down, that's on her.
Yeah.
But it also puts her in a weird predicament because she was supposed to fight. Now you want to move up. You got to add an extra 10 minutes to the fight. She was prepared. It's a completely different opponent. And it's not like you and your opponent's moving up with 15 minutes, from 15 minutes to 25. That your opponent you're facing has been training for 25 minutes this whole time. Like if it was offered to her, which it probably wasn't, but if it was, it's still a tough situation to be in.
Yeah.
It just sucks.
But I mean, even more than whether it's fair to Dumont, whether it's fair to Chiasson, even any of that, my concern is just having her cut weight again 2 weeks after she was just on the actual verge of collapse on the scale. And the thing is, this is 145, but Ladd has a big cut even to make 145.
That's right.
This is a woman who, for the Durandamy fight, walked into the cage on 160 pounds, and the California State Athletic Commission threatened never to sanction her at bantamweight again.
Yeah.
Even to make 145, she's going to have another significant cut, and it's God forbid, the terrible day that we have our first death in a high level MMA promotion in a regulated area. I'm not talking about some,
Sure.
backwoods thing where somebody is fighting on a stage in a bar, but at the UFC Bellator level in a regulated area, the first time we have someone die, it's not going to be from in-cage injury. It's going to be from weight cutting. And so anything that just encourages this to keep happening, I'm uncomfortable with. I'm uncomfortable with this main event happening, but it's happening. And if any good thing comes out of it, if any good thing comes out of this, I hope it is that Aspen Ladd either wins or if she loses, feels good physically and performs well and just realizes, hey, I should have been at featherweight all along.
Yeah.
Especially coming back after, my knee being blown out. Why don't I just stay at 145? That would be my best possible outcome, win or lose.
Yeah. The worst thing would be if somehow she misses weight again at 145 or that she has a bad performance based on not having, a camp for this opponent and draining your body twice and, all the different things that goes on. And then she gets out muscled, who's also Norma Dumont is a, strong 145-pound woman. Out muscles her.
Who repeatedly failed to make 135.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. This is the girls that couldn't make weight because she was supposed to go against Erin Blanchfield, if you remember. She missed weight by like 5 pounds. And Erin Blanchfield was moving up from a weight.
Yeah.
Anyways, what I was gonna say is, man, she gets overpowered, and then she thinks, oh, I got to go down to 135, and then it makes it even worse.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyways, we spent enough time. I just at least wanted to get the rant out there that I'm not okay with someone being rewarded. I think honestly, it would have sucked, but I would have just made Arlovski and Felipe the main event.
Yep. I would have been fine with that.
I would have signed some random 145 pound. If you really wanted Norma Dumont, find some random 145 pound woman.
Yeah. There are plenty out there. Well, not plenty, but there are plenty of bantamweights, any one of whom might have stepped up for the paycheck on short notice.
That's another. I'm sure there would have been a 135-pound woman who would willing to step up. So I'm not talking outside the UFC. You're right. A random 135-pounder.
All right, you ready to talk about these actual fights?
Yeah, let's do it.
The opening fight of UFC Fight Night 195 is a strawweight matchup between the debuting Istela Nunes and Ariane Carnelossi. Nunes, the 29-year-old Brazilian, is 6-1 with 1 no contest overall. She is making her delayed UFC debut, having been signed out of one championship all the way back in 2018, promptly failed an out-of-competition drug test, which put her on the shelf. She is now making that debut this Saturday. She'll be taking on Carnelossi. The 28-year-old Brazilian is 13-2 overall. She's 1-1 since joining the UFC in fall of 2019. She dropped her debut against Angela Hill on a third-round TKO, doctor stoppage due to cuts, then bounced back from that this past April at UFC 261, knocking out Na Liang in the second round. Odds favor Carnelossi. She is minus 155. You can get Nunes at plus 135 on the comeback. Keith, I done forgot all about Istela Nunes. I remember her pinging my radar when the UFC signed her. She's one of 2 fighters on this card whose UFC debut was delayed due to a failed out-of-competition drug test. This is going to be a tough matchup for her. For one thing, she's a former atomweight. She's a former one championship atomweight, which is 115 pounds, but she was a former atomweight before that. And she's stepping up to fight someone in Carnelossi that you and I both think, pound for pound, relative to size, might be the most jacked human being in the UFC. Ariane Carnelossi is an absolute tank of a woman.
Sorry, Avac, can I interrupt you though? Did
Please.
You see that girl in the contender series this week? This is so funny that I'm asking people contender series because usually I'm the contender series expert, but I haven't done any tape study. This is my first year I didn't do the contender series. But there was a girl on it that was wicked ripped. I was like, wow, this girl's challenging Ariane Carnelossi.
Yeah, her name.
I'll look it up while you.
Yeah.
She ended up winning, but she didn't get a contract.
On paper, Nunes brings a lot of the same things to the table that Angela Hill used to beat Carnelossi. Nunes is a Muay Thai striker. She prefers to fight at a deliberate pace, keep the range, fight from outside using her footwork, her teep to kind of maintain distance. Because Carnelossi, she ran right at Angela Hill, and I mean that's if all you've got is that. You are tailor-made for Angela Hill to piece you up, which she did. But Angela Hill is bigger. She's more experienced, generally good at managing range. I don't think Nunes, as someone who will not be especially bigger than Carnelossi, is going to have those avenues to victory. I don't know if Carnelossi's a finished product. She's still just kind of a charge forward with punches woman. She's willing to take the fight to the ground. She's also happy to slug it out on the feet. I still think she's going to stumble against more experienced fighters who know what they want to do. Carnelossi's plan is still just kind of run forward and smash. But I think that's going to be good enough against Nunes. I would have favored Carnelossi against the version of Nunes that was in her last couple of one championship fights. And I can't imagine she's gotten better since then. There's always the possibility, as you mentioned, that a fighter in their mid-20s that takes 2 years off, they come back a substantially improved fighter. But there's also the possibility that she's just the same fighter she was and just, had that time on the shelf. I've seen Carnelossi recently, and I still think that at the UFC level, she's going to be good enough to smash women that she physically outmatches. Nunes falls into that category. So give me Carnelossi by a second round TKO, probably on the ground.
It's so funny. I'm looking at Carnelossi's record, and I, pop over to Angela Hill, and shout out to Angela Hill. I mean, talk about a girl who's being active. Like, I felt like that fight was just happened because it was only 2 fights ago for Ariane Carnelossi. Well, Angela Hill has had 6 fights since, but she's been scheduled 11 times since. It's just she's one of a kind. She truly is one of a kind. I mean, she'll never be a UFC champion, but she's like the people's champion. Like,
yep.
Anyways, Maria Silva was the name of the fighter I was talking about. Go figure, a Brazilian girl's name is Maria Silva.
That's why I couldn't remember it. It's just straight out of the Brazilian fighter name generator,
Her nickname should be Pitbull.
Yep.
So yeah, Carnelossi, as you talked about, we love her because of taking out bench press, both of us. She's very aggressive on the feet. She just charges forward like a bull. Wants to get in the pocket, throw her boxing, big power shots. I said last time she reminds me of the poor women's JV version of Jessica Andrade. She has the high output, which is really surprising for such a power puncher, someone who throws as hard. Like, her cardio really impresses me. I think she's intelligent. She goes down to the body. The one thing I didn't like, though, is that she really struggled to cut off the cage, and I think that was a difference in the Angela Hill fight, is she couldn't catch her. And then she was losing clinch battles against Angela Hill, which Angela Hill is a very underrated Muay Thai practitioner, so that happens. But too, I was just surprised that she was getting out muscled for someone who has a physique that she has. Again, UFC debut against a true veteran who's like an upper echelon in the weight class, Angela Hill too. That's a tough test for anybody. But I like that she goes to the body, hard calf kicks, hard body kicks. One thing that I am concerned is, like I said, she struggled with the speed of Angela Hill, but also she's had a long layoff, and we found out that she's had back problems, which ruins fighters' careers. Say what you want, Tito Ortiz was never the same after neck and back surgeries and stuff. She's had 2 slip discs in her back, which is really concerning, especially for someone who, one, uses their power, uses forward movement so much. Now, Nunes, she's had a 3-year layoff. I tend to like her more than you do. She's a Muay Thai striker. She's a 2-time world champion in Muay Thai. I think she's elusive. I like that she uses feints with both her hands and her feet. Good jab. She can strike while backing up, which is she's going to need to do in this fight, because I don't care how much she's throwing at Carnelossi. Carnelossi's going to first force her back on her back foot, forcing her towards the cage. I love her switch high kick that she does. She'll switch real quick and then come up high with it. She really turns over her hips on her kicks, so she generates good power. I like her push kicks. She was dropped in her last fight, and it was scored a knockdown. I think it was more of a slip. Strong in the clinch, good framing. So she's good knees up the middle. She's not much of a grappler. She comes from a Muay Thai background. She was submitted against Angela Lee, which is in hindsight has aged really well. That's not a bad loss. You mentioned that she was an atomweight, but she's big though. She's 5'4", so she's not Tisha Torres 5 feet tall or 4'11". She's actually bigger than Angela Hill. Not that Angela Hill is a gigantic destroyer, but I mean, she's the taller fighter of these two. She's not going to be the stronger fighter. As far as prediction goes, I think this is a great fight. I think it's one of the best fights of the card. I'm looking over the card and I'm like, what fight? Now, obviously, I understand why it's buried in the card. You got 2 lesser known names. I don't expect it to be up. But fights that I'm actually intrigued for, there's probably one other fight. Actually, 2 fights. There's 2 fights in the card that I'm more intrigued for than this one. You got a Bull versus a Matador, Tank versus Sniper. The back injury concerns me, but the long layoff for Nunes, the UFC debut, concerns me. I like Istela's poise, though. I think she's going to have to be on her, backing up. She's going to have to strike while backing up. She's going to have to use lateral movement. but I think she's got the speed, and I think she's gonna pull the upset. I was messaged last week, probably because I was so distracted doing the live show, that I didn't pick an upset special. So guys, I'm not gonna disappoint our listeners. I'm gonna do it right out the gate. Give me Nunes in an upset by decision over a girl that I love in Carnelossi. And the reason why I'm saying this, I love both these girls. I think they're both great, but I want to take Nunes.
There we go. We have
the
upset special right out the gate. We have some disagreement right out of the gate. It's going to be a live one. We're making the best we possibly can out of this very questionable card, and we will soldier on with the prelims. Next up on the UFC Vegas 40 prelims, it is a bantamweight matchup. It is Mongolia versus Mississippi. It is Danaa Batgerel versus Brandon Davis. Batgerel, the 32-year-old Mongolian, is 9-2 overall. He's 2-1 in the UFC. He dropped his debut back in August of 2019 to Alateng Haley, has bounced back from that with back-to-back wins over Guido Canetti and Kevin Natividad, both by first-round knockouts. Most recently, the Natividad fight was just this past April at UFC 261. He will welcome back to the UFC Davis. The 31-year-old Mississippian is 14-8 overall. He is 2-5 in the UFC after joining out of the first season of Dana White's Contender Series. So went 2-5, was dropped by the UFC, went back to Mississippi, won 4 straight in Gulf Coast MMA, and gets the call back up. I'm going to toss this to you for your pick first, but first thing I'm going to point out is there's some disparity in strength of schedule between these two guys. Like, Davis made it to 2-5 in the UFC back in an era when that didn't happen very often, mostly because he never got a softball. Like, his 2 wins in the UFC were Steven Peterson and Randy Costa, neither of whom is a bad fighter. Like, neither of them is ranked right now, but neither of them has a losing record in the UFC. But the guys he lost
to,
like,
Costa one's deceiving, though. Randy Costa took that fight and his debut in like days' notice. I would take Randy Costa to win now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but Karen, it's still a good win.
Yeah, dude, his losses: Zabit Magomed-Sharipov, Giga Chikadze, Enrique Barzola. Like, he's lost to killers. Like, he was always better than his record in the UFC. You know, again, went back down to Mississippi, like, cleaned house, and he's getting the call back. Then you can compare that to Batgerel. I mean, dude, Guido Canetti and Kevin Natividad those are some well-manicured bounce back fights, you know.
And to his credit, he got a split decision against Chikadze.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I mean,
think about that. You named, it's not often Giga Chikadze is not the hardest fight on the schedule.
Yeah. There you go. Like, I mean, I thought Chikadze like beat him fair and square, but it was a competitive fight. And like, Zabit is one of the most impossible fighters in the UFC to look good against. He had to fight him too. But I mean, here they meet. Batgerel is the favorite. He's minus 185. Davis, you can get him at plus 160. Keith, you know, Davis might be better than his UFC record looked. Batgerel might not be as good as his UFC record looks. Do they meet in the middle, or is this one going to go the way of the Mongolian?
Yeah, I'm looking at his last 2 losses. He got him kicked out of the UFC. They both were split decisions too. You know, like he wins. He gets one other scorecard on either Chikadze or Kang Ho Kang, and he was probably stayed in the UFC, and we'd have 10 fights or something by now. Yeah, the first thing you just said is he better than his UFC record? Yeah, I think so, and I think he showed that since he left the UFC. Like, he didn't face killers, but I watched his fights outside the UFC, and he looked really good. Again, much lower level than Giga Chikadze, but you know, he did what you're supposed to do. You go to the UFC, you go on a nice little run, 4 wins, back in there. I think Brandon Davis is more tough than skilled, but sometimes that's what you need. Like, sometimes there's some guys who are really skilled who aren't tough. Now, that's a blanket statement. Every single fighter who's in the UFC is tough. I mean, on the scale of the UFC, that's what I mean by that.
Right.
Before someone says, "Oh, don't call a UFC fighter not tough." Of course they are. They fight the baddest dudes on the planet for a living. But Brandon Davis, he marches forward. He's very aggressive, high output. I mean, that's all his game is, high output. His last fight, he went to the body, showed his intelligence. Body kick knockout is how he finished his last fight. Chopping leg kicks. He's one of the fighters who does check leg kicks and makes it a priority. Some holes defensively. He stands tall. He's very hittable. He keeps his chin high. He's not known for his wrestling, but he will look to wrestle even just to win rounds. But he does struggle to stop takedowns. He was taken down 6 out of his 8 UFC fights. Kung Ho Kei, Zabit, Barzola, Steven Peterson, Kyle Boschnack all took him down. I think like Boschnack and Steven Peterson aren't really known for the wrestling. They still took him down. But he has got really good cardio. Like, he's going to go hard 15 minutes. He's going to make it a dogfight to 15 minutes. Another thing about Brandon Davis, like, I just think of a veteran, and then I look at his age, and he's only 31. Like, obviously, he's not young. I just expect him to be older than that. Like, I expect him to be like 36 or something. Like, he's kind of in his prime, and I kind of thought he was past his prime. Now move over to Bakare. Good on his feet. It really stands out to me. Good speed. He has an in and out game where he blitzes in, attacks, and then he uses good footwork to get out before you counter. His straight right is his moneymaker, but he's got a nice check left hook, nice left high kick. His straight right, I wrote it down twice, so it must be really good. I went back a couple of fights ago. I think it was the Guido Canetti. I mean, he got back-to-back knockout, first-round knockout win, so he's really showing off his power. But I think it was the Guido Canetti fight that I was watching, and Daniel Cormier was commenting about his like feet battle, like battling with the feet. He's something that he's got really good footwork, and he's always winning. So he's lining his punch up. That's why his right hand is so deadly, and that's something that shows a lot of maturity. And then he's showing off his power back-to-back knockout losses. He hasn't shown much in the grappling, and that's actually an area where I think Brandon Davis could come out. And like I said, I think he's got underrated wrestling, and he might want to look for that. That might be his best avenue. I think this is a tough fight. Like, Brandon Davis is a dog, and he's gonna if he overwhelms Batgerel with volume, like, that wouldn't surprise me at all. I just think he's gonna have a hard time catching Batgerel because Batgerel's very fast. I think he hits harder. I think he's a hand speed faster, but I also mean like his lateral movement. Davis has never been knocked out, so I say he reaches decision, but I think Batgerel's going to land the cleaner, harder shots, have Davis hurt a couple times. Give me Batgerel by decision, but based on Davis's style and his output, I think this is going to be a war. So I gave you my upset pick of the first fight. I'm going to make this my fight of the night, so make sure you tune in early. I think it starts at 4 o'clock. Tune in early because this is my fight of the night pick.
Yeah, I love what you point out about the disparity in foot speed and just kind of quality of footwork, because I agree. I think Davis his best route to victory here would be to see if he can get Bakary down on the ground. He knocked out Kevin Natividad before Natividad even really got a chance to get it going. But I was interested to see if Natividad could get him down. You know, he's a good wrestler, a persistent wrestler. And a really quick guy, but that thing was over in 45 seconds. But all the way back to his UFC debut, Alateng Haley, it was really anyone's fight through 2 rounds, and Alateng Haley won the last round by taking him down, getting inside control, and at least doing enough damage and keeping him from getting back up to just basically take that round. That's a route that's open to Davis. You point out he's probably a little bit of an underrated wrestler. He should be a significantly kind of bigger and stronger guy in the cage. But if he elects to just do his swarming forward with punches thing, yeah, Bakery's gonna like cut angles, dance around them, and just pity pat him up all night. I'd love to see Davis commit to trying to get this fight to the ground. I don't know if he will or if he will until too late. So I am, even though I think Davis belongs in the UFC and I hope he sticks around, give me Bakary by decision in this one as well. But yeah, should be a real fun fight. The UFC Fight Night 195 prelims keep on trucking with a featherweight matchup between Nate Landwehr and Ludovit Klein. Landwehr, the 33-year-old Tennessee native, is 14-4 overall. He's 1-2 since joining the UFC out of M1 Challenge of all things. He has lost to Herbert Burns and Julian Erosa, both by first-round knockout. Those are sandwiched around a unanimous decision win over the eternally tough Darren Elkins. That most recent fight, the Erosa fight, was back in February at UFC Fight Night Blades versus Lewis. He'll be taking on Klein. The 26-year-old Slovakian is 17-3 overall. He is 1-1 since joining the UFC out of Central European promotions like Octagon MMA and XFN. He won his UFC debut with a first-round head kick knockout of Shane Young, then came back this May at UFC on ESPN Rodriguez versus Watterson and dropped a unanimous decision to Mike Trizano. Klein is one of the bigger favorites on the card. He is currently out there at minus 300. Landwehr available at plus 250 as the underdog. Keith, who have you got in this one? And are you still buying in to the hype on Ludovit Klein?
Yeah, I am, because I thought he won against Mike Trizano. I mean, it wasn't a great performance, and I actually thought it was like a letdown performance for him, but I still thought he won. I don't know. I didn't check MMA decisions, but I don't know if you submitted your scorecard. I know you don't always submit your scorecard, but I remember the majority of people gave it to Klein. Landwehr was a guy who also had a lot of hype when he first came to UFC. That kind of has fallen off too. Landwehr, he's a fun action fighter. Like he's it's funny because I feel like it's been a theme a lot lately, just by the layout of some of the fighters that we've had on recently. We've had a lot of aggressive fighters, like Carnelossi, someone who's super aggressive. Like Landwehr might outmatch her and how aggressive he is. High output, just keeps coming. I said last time I compared it to like a Diego Sanchez, like when Diego was just running at people. He's insanely tough, just keeps coming. No setups, not a lot of defense at all. Just keep touching, throwing behind a jab, nice hard calf kicks. But he's got a lot of technical flaws. I mean, I go back to Darren Elkins' fight. He was squaring up his feet to launch punches at him. He's got wrestling backwards, so he's strong in the clinch. Showed good takedown defense against Darren Elkins. But he's very hittable based on his style, because he throws defense out the window. If you take him down, I've been impressed with his get-up game. He does have good sub-defense too if you take him down. And he's got great cardio to go hard 15 minutes. Now, Ludovit Klein, southpaw, plus athlete, I'd say light on his feet, uses a lot of feints to his game, very technically sound. A lot of up and down feints. He's more of this kind of feints than your shoulder rolls. Great jab, good power. Really steps into his shots. The legs are a real asset of his, where he's throwing powerful leg kicks, throwing up the high kick. I love that when he does about his, and it's just a general something I've noticed. High kicks is such a great weapon in MMA, because even when you don't land, you either one, it actually can hurt your opponent when they block it, but also like you shift your opponent. If there's a live crowd, not like there was this one, but if there's a live crowd, the crowd always gets super excited. They like pop when you, so it sounds so much better. It's a blocked high kick should be the same as a blocked punch, but it doesn't get the same reaction. Anyways, but back to this, he throws a high kick, and what I like, well, I don't think the Trizano fight was a good showing. He showed improved offensive wrestling, where he was getting takedowns against Trizano. As far as prediction goes, I only see one avenue of victory for Landwehr, and that is to tire Klein out with constant pressure. We've talked about the guy backing up is working harder than the guy moving forward. Go to a track, run one lap, jogging forward, then do one backwards, and you tell me which one you're more tired. That's basically what I'm saying with this. Like you run backwards, it tires you out. So if Landwehr can get him to back up and really or just wrestle him a lot and make him scramble, that could tire him out. But that's it. I don't think Klein is the guy you chase. I think he's too technically sound on the feet. Landwehr, to his credit, we love aggressive guys, but he almost has it like turned up too fast. Like, when you have the setting on the lawnmower, and it's like that mid is good. You turn it up too loud. It's no, you can't. You got to turn it about that 5. Don't go all the way up to like the 8. That's where Landwehr should be. I think Landwehr runs into a big shot, and I think I'm gonna go with Klein to put him out. I'm gonna say it happens. I'm gonna say second round. So give me Klein by second round knockout.
I'm with you, except that I'm actually going to go first round. Landwehr, he is aggressive to a fault, as you pointed out, and he is susceptible to getting caught early. It's almost like the Cowboy Cerrone thing, where he never looks like he's really warmed up, backstage. And sometimes against a sufficiently aggressive and opportunistic opponent, Cowboy just never gets out of the gate, and he's over before it starts. Landwehr's similar, except that he's like, I'm going to warm up by running straight at you with all my punches. And as you pointed out, Klein is not the guy you want to do that to, especially because even though, obviously he has a great high kick, he's not the early Edson Barboza where you're like, okay, you just need to crowd the kicker, because he's also good at tagging people with stuff moving forward in phone booth range. I think he's going to catch Landwehr with something in the first round. Maybe it's a high kick that starts the ball rolling downhill, like it was in the, can't remember which fight, or maybe he just tags him with a knee or a nice, counter right as Landwehr charges forward. But give me Ludovit Klein to get back on track with a first round knockout of Nate Landwehr. And you were asking before on MMA decisions, it was something like 12-3 scored it for Klein over Trezano. You scored it for Klein. 2 of Sherdog's official scores that night did. Jay Petrie was the one dissenting guy who gave it to Trezano. And I love Jay, but he was wrong that time.
Well, I mean, it was a really close. I mean,
it was a close fight. And it all swung pretty much on one round.
Yeah, anytime we can rag on Jay, we'll take it.
Yeah. But anytime we rag on Jay, we're joking. All right. We now head down to the flyweight division for what will be a record-making appearance if it ends up happening. It is Luana Carolina and Lupita Godinez. And if the name Lupita Godinez sounds familiar to you, it is because she fought last Saturday at UFC Fight Night 194.
And I botched her name 40 times too. That's why.
There you go.
Between the recap and the preview show. That's why.
With originally scheduled opponent Sijara Eubanks withdrawing due to COVID protocols, Godinez is stepping in and will appear against Carolina on a 7-day turnaround. That will break the modern UFC record that was set last summer by Khamzat Chimaev, who fought Reese McKee and forget who the other guy was, 10 days apart. This will break that record, assuming Godinez makes it through the weigh-ins and to the cage. 7-day turnaround. Godinez, the 28-year-old Mexican by way of Canada, is 6-1 overall. She is 1-1 in the UFC. She dropped her debut via split decision to Jessica Penne at UFC on ESPN, Whitaker versus Gastelum back in April. She fought last weekend against Silvana Gomez Juarez, getting a first-round armbar at UFC Fight Night, Dern versus Rodriguez. She turns right back around. She's going to take on Carolina. The 28-year-old Brazilian is 7-2 overall. She's 2-1 since joining the UFC out of the first season of Dana White's Contender Series Brazil. She has beaten Priscila Cachoeira and Poliana Botelho, both by decision. Those sandwiched around a first-round, extremely painful-looking submission loss via knee bar to Ariane Lipski. Her most recent appearance, that Botelho fight, was in May at UFC on ESPN, Reyes versus Prochazka. Despite the short turnaround, Godinez is almost as big a favorite as Eubanks was setting up to be. She is minus 285 to be successful in her quick turnaround appearance. Carolina's out there at plus 225. And I've got to say, I kind of agree. Godinez took next to no damage in that fight. In fact, I was watching it on the plane, actually, flying from Salt Lake City back to Houston. I don't know what the official strike counts were, but I didn't see Silvana Gomez Juarez land anything of note on her, not a mark on her. Didn't look to get especially tired. So unless making the repeat weight cut really, really saps her, I think this is her fight to win. She's a deceptively good athlete. I didn't tag her as a plus athlete in her debut against Jessica Penne, even though she looked fine in LFA. But now I think that's just because of Jessica Penne's magical power to turn every fight into a Jessica Penne fight. She's a great, Penne's a great neutralizer, always has been. And if you are a plus athlete, a fast twitch, bouncy athlete, she's going to slow the fight down. Long and rangy on the feet, very capable of taking care of herself on the ground. She was a tough debut opponent to look good against for Godinez. I think the Juarez fight I mean, it might be taken to the other extreme, but that's closer to what Lupita Godinez really is. An aggressive woman with finishing ability on the feet as well as on the ground. I think she's definitely UFC flyweight material for the foreseeable future. I don't know what her ceiling is, but I'm not sure that Luana Carolina is UFC material. I mean, beating Priscilla Cachoeira and Poliana Botelho and not really a dominant performance either time doesn't tell me much. I expect that Lupita Godinez is going to win 2 UFC fights 7 days apart here. Give me Godinez by decision.
Ben, you have any concern about her moving up in weight?
Not especially.
No. So I was going to take Sijara Eubanks to beat Carolina. I thought that was a really favorable matchup. I'll put Godinez on hold now. I'll talk about Carolina for a second. So Carolina, yeah, she's an experienced Muay Thai practitioner. She's a long and lengthy outboxer, likes to fight from range, long strikes, long jab, teep kicks up the middle, hard leg kicks. She uses her height well in the plum clinch, where she can, reach to get the back of the neck and then throw off knees pretty easily, blast knees inside. But her takedown defense is non-existent. It's really bad. She's really bad grappler. Now, Godinez, I have more concern about moving up than you do, being that she's only 5'2", and then she's going against a girl who I don't have the height of Carolina, but she's gonna be much bigger.
Yeah.
We talked about Aspen Ladd like cutting weight, and Godinez she's not a big strawweight. Like from as far as I know, it's like she doesn't struggle to make the weight class, but then also it still takes a toll on you, even going up 10 pounds, because like the strategy is when you make weight is suddenly to like overhydrate yourself and hydrate way up. So she probably come fight night is over 125. Now I'm assuming she's going to make it fairly easily. But it's still a little concerning to put that. We don't know what kind of effects that has on someone's body. But like you said, good thing she didn't take any damage. A lot of my notes could be similar to what I said a week ago. She's really good output. She's a wrestler boxer, good boxing. She marches forward, fast hands, good footwork, great right hand. You said that you think she's a plus athlete. I agree with that. I think she's a good athlete. Good power. She really steps into shots. Good takedowns. Go back to the Jessica Penne fight, a fight that I thought. No, actually, I think I scored it for Penne, but that was close. But Jessica Penne, like she threw around Jessica Penne with her wrestling. Go back to last week's fight, Sylvania Gomez Suarez. She threw her around. She has solid takedown defense if you take it down, and she sort of really slick BJJ with the belly down armbar in the scramble. What jumped out to me most is besides her speed, which it really showed off last week, is I love that she boxes when you expect her to wrestle, and then she wrestles when you expect her to box. I love that about her. Even though I continually was mispronouncing her name, Godinez is one of my favorite fighters that recently added to the UFC. As you mentioned, she's small for strawweight. Moving up to flyweight is concerning, especially against a bigger Carolina. But that's about it. Like, I'm worried about if she can get around the range of Carolina. I'm worried, obviously, if she gets caught with something coming in. But I expect her to take Carolina down early like she did against Suarez. She likes to use her wrestling. That's the weakness of Carolina. She made it a priority against like a good grappler against Jessica Penne, so I expect her to make it a priority against a terrible grappler like Carolina. I think she picks her up, takes her down, bashes her in the ground. I'm all in on Godinez. I think Godinez is going to get another first-round stoppage. I'm going to say this time by ground and pound, and instantly she's on my Bulls, probably number one if she gets to win back-to-back first-round stoppages and within a week.
Yep. We now head to the welterweight division, and it is Danny Roberts versus Ramazan Emeev. Roberts, the 34-year-old Brit, is 17-5 overall. He's 6-4 since joining the UFC out of Cage Warriors Fighting Championship. It has been almost 2 years since we've seen him in the cage. His last fight was back in November 2019, second round TKO of Zalim Imadaev back at UFC Fight Night Magomed Sharipov versus Cater. that snapped a 2-fight losing streak against Michel Pereira and Claudio Silva. But at any rate, the man they call Hot Chocolate is back, and waiting to welcome him back is Emeev. The 34-year-old Dagestani is 20-4 overall. He's 5-1 in the UFC, having beaten Sam Alvey, Alberto Mina, Stefan Sekulic, Nicholas Stolze, and David Zavada. His only loss in the UFC, a competitive decision loss to Anthony Rocco Martin back in November of 2019. He's on a 2-fight winning streak since then over Stolze and Zavada. He is a strong favorite to keep that streak going, as he is minus 260 right now. Roberts out there around plus 215 or plus 220. I got to say, I'm going to turn this one over to you first, Keith, but surprised the UFC made this fight. I mean, you've got a good fighter who's generally very exciting to watch in Danny Roberts, and a very good fighter who's generally dreadful to watch in Ramazan Emeev. It's a bad matchup for Roberts, and they booked it nonetheless. Like this has whatever the opposite of fight of the night is written all over it, and just a bad look for a pretty exciting guy in Roberts. How do you feel about this one?
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought of when I did this matchup. The only thing that is more surprising than this matchup is I think you mentioned that Emeev beat Sam Alvey. You're telling me Sam Alvey has lost fights recently? Because that's really surprising to me.
Well, I bet he was really angry and didn't think he lost.
Yeah. All right, we're getting way off the rails, but
yeah.
How about the change of personality of Sam Alvey? Coming in, singing, dancing, smiling Sam Alvey, and then cussing and swearing on his way out. Like, I love that. I don't want him to fight in the UFC anymore because he's holding a roster, but then I still do because I mean he's extremely boring in the cage. But it's still funny watching smiling Sam Alvey cussing people out as he's walking out of the cage, pissed off that he didn't win a fight that he threw 4 punches in. Anyways, back to this fight. I think it's probably because I was more excited to talk about Sam Alvey. Yeah, imagine like Danny Roberts, like you said, it's someone extremely excited. Like imagine if they put him against like Nico Price. Like, wouldn't you be so like if they had Nico Price right now, I'd be like, oh my god, what a great fight this is gonna be. Or you throw him Mike Perry rematch, but instead he gets me.
Like, did they just look at him and be like, the black British guy, is that Leon Edwards? Yeah, let's give him just like they forgot who they got here.
Hey,
like
hey, let's be honest. If Danny Roberts wins this fight, he's on a 2-fight winning streak, and he has a better shot to get a title shot than Leon Edwards does. Anyways, back to breaking news. Leon Edwards got another fight before getting a title shot. Emeev, he's your classic wrestle boxer. He's on the feet. He stays compact. He throws hard. He attacks with combinations. Has good timing on his overhand right. He's heavy on his front foot, so he generates some good power, but he does leave himself open to get leg kicked and doesn't check leg kicks. But he kind of he separates his wrestling and his striking. He doesn't blend them together. Either he's striking or he's wrestling. In his wrestling, he's got good entries. I mean, this is a international master of combat sports sambo. So he's got the accolades of these top Russian fighters. You would assume that hold on. Even though he's got decent entries, you get a lot of like missed shots, grinding against the fence, boring. That's why we're talking about. He doesn't. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to describe him. Like even though he's got all these accolades, like it's still gonna be a close fight somehow because like he tends to like fight down to his opponents. It seems like David Zawada seemed like such a good matchup for Emeev, and it was still a really close fight. And I think Zawada's a little better than we've given him credit for, but just the point, like Emeev should be so much better than he is, and he's been taken down by lesser wrestlers. Now, move over to Danny Roberts, really big for the weight class. That's the first thing that stands out to me. He's a big dude. He's southpaw, but he does switch stances a lot. Good lateral movement. He's got fast hands. He tends to he's a southpaw that has what I always like to say the Dan Henderson in him, where he gets a good punch. He's got his left hand. Now he just keeps throwing it over and over again, kind of telegraphs a little bit. But he got a nice snap on his shots. He showed in his last fight he's got power to put you out if you make a mistake. Though he can be a little loopy and a little wild with his strikes, he needs to clean that up a little bit. He loves if he goes to the southpaw stance and you're in an orthodox stance. He loves the body kick when you're the cross stance from each other. He doesn't handle pressure too well. Medaev was having success against Danny Roberts early with just pressuring him back and forcing him back. He was doing well until he wasn't doing well when he was unconscious. But the biggest thing I dislike about Danny Roberts in his striking is that he pillars instead of slips. It's just a defensive technique that I've never really thought transitions well in MMA, simply because pillaring really the key to pillaring is you have these big boxing gloves and you can kind of hide behind the boxing gloves. That's why it doesn't work well in MMA as much. You kind of need to slip and rip more of a style. But due to his size, he's pretty strong in the clinch. He will wrestle himself. Like, he's known for his striking, but he's not a terrible wrestler. Not much of a top control guy, but if he takes you down, like steel exchanges, but bad takedown defense. I mean, he was taken down in 6 of 10 UFC fights. But he's hard to hold down. He's got pretty good at scrambling. Another concern I have with Danny Roberts is he's taken a lot of damage over the years. Like, I go back to all the way back to the Mike Perry fight. That's like a fight he's taken a lot of damage. But to his credit, and I don't know if I shouldn't say to his credit, but what's the word I'm looking for? In defense, he's been out a lot, so he's had time to recover in those fights. As far as prediction goes, like I said, Emeev fights down to his opponents, which made me really, really, really badly want to pick Danny Roberts in an upset. Emeev strikes more than he should, and if he does, like, Danny Roberts can put you out. However, I think Roberts has a speed advantage. I think he has a power advantage. I think he's a more technically sound striker, even though I don't think he's a very technically sound striker. I think he's more of a good athlete. The issue with this fight is Emeev has such a massive gap in the wrestling. And if Emeev came to me and said, I'm going to wrestle, I'd take him as the easiest pick on the entire card. But I don't know if he will. Like, I don't know if he'll wrestle enough. I think Emeev's going to give some scares. I think Danny Roberts might wobble him a couple times, but I think Emeev will wrestle enough to get a Emeev split decision. This guy wins again, but he's not that good showing.
Yeah, I'm with you on all of this, right down to the really, really wanting to pick Roberts. If it weren't for the 2-year layoff, I'd probably just go for it outright, even as the 2-1 or greater underdog. Ramazan Emeev, it's interesting how a guy who comes up with the same basic skill set as your cookie cutter Dagestani fighter. You come from like the sambo and wrestling background, and you kind of pick up the striking elements that work for you. How different his game is than a lot of those guys, and if it was easy to come up through that kind of system and just be an instant world beater, everyone would be Khabib Nurmagomedov. But he was a special athlete on top of, well, I say was, like, he's 50 years old somewhere. He's still the best lightweight in the world. He's just off taking pictures for his.
He might be the
channel.
best fighter in the world.
Yeah, he might be the best fighter in the world, period, right now, and he's just off doing his thing. But Emeev does not have any of that, and I think that's part of the reason why his takedown approach just doesn't result in as many clean takedowns as an Islam Makhachev or a Khabib Nurmagomedov. It's why he ends up mashing people against the cage. Like, just the first shot doesn't work, second shot doesn't work. He ends up clinched. They end up backed up into the cage, and well, there goes the rest of that round. They're going to be touching the cage for the remaining 3 minutes and 45 seconds of this round. Yeah, there's every chance that Roberts could just take his head clean off, or just nail him with a nasty body kick. And just fold him in half, especially because Emeev, he hangs out too long on the feet while not throwing enough volume. But yeah, again, with all the question marks over Roberts and the long absence, I expect this is going to be at least 2 rounds out of 3 of just, cage mashing and slow motion takedown attempts, opposite of the fight of the night, and a cautious pick for Ramazan Emeev by decision. The top prelim at UFC Vegas 40 is a middleweight matchup between Andrew Sanchez and Bruno Silva. Sanchez, the 33-year-old Missourian, is 12-6 overall. He is 5-4 since joining the UFC out of the old RFA before it became half of LFA. Fought most recently in January at UFC 257, dropping a third-round TKO to Mahmoud Muradov. He's taking on Silva, the 32-year-old Brazilian, is 20-6 overall. He's 1-0 in the UFC, and like Istela Nunes, was signed by the UFC all the way back in 2019 or maybe late 2018, and he promptly failed an out-of-competition drug test, which then shelved him. So he was out for 2019 and all of 2020 before coming back this June for his long-awaited debut. He is the slight favorite here. He's minus 135. Sanchez plus 115 as the slight underdog. I love how USADA just snatched Bruno Silva right out of the gate. They saw the deltoids on this man and say, "Hey, wait up, Brazil. Let's put you on the shelf for a year or two, before you get in here." And he's another one that I'd forgotten all about, and I picked against him when he fought Wellington Turman back in June, just because, hey, you know what? If you've been gone for 2 years, it was because of a PED bust, and you turned 30 while you were gone. I'm not going to pick you to be as good or better than when you left. Like that, I just chose the wait and see approach and picked Turman to beat him, even though Turman is he's a borderline UFC level middleweight himself. I was wrong. Bruno Silva looked fantastic. He, regardless of how he got there before or how he gets there now, he is a strong, fast, elite athlete. He, not the niftiest striker, but he has fast hands and everything, throws everything really hard. That was good enough to lamp Wellington Turman inside of a round. And he's going up against someone in Sanchez that, I had higher hopes for Sanchez when he came to the UFC. It's hard to believe that this is only his 10th UFC fight, because it feels like, man, he's been in the UFC since before there was an LFA. He was an RFA champ, all the way back in 2015, but he's been prone to injury, and he's fought basically once a year, 3 times every 2 years, never really been able to build up, much in the way of momentum. And Sanchez is kind of the opposite of Silva. He's not a plus athlete. He's always seemed kind of slow and plodding. He has good skills. He's solid everywhere. He has good offense on the ground as well as on the feet, but he's always been pretty susceptible to his opponent's offense. I think 3 of his 4 UFC losses have been by finish. And I think this fight is just going to get the hype train cranked back up for Silva even more. I think he's going to come out, catch Sanchez with something early. Give me Bruno Silva by first round TKO, not because he's that much better than Sanchez, but just because the matchup in their approach to fighting and the difference in athleticism is really going to be telling.
So, Ben, what baby would be stronger? A baby dinosaur or the baby that was made from Bruno Silva and what's the girl's name in the open?
Istela Nunes?
No, Ariane Carnelossi. If they had a baby, if Carnelossi and Bruno Silva had a baby, would that baby be stronger, or would a baby dinosaur be stronger?
I think probably the Silva Carnelossi baby. It would be like a circus strongman baby that would be lifting the big barbell that's bending. Yeah.
The shoulders on that kid.
Yeah. Dude, this is a reference that you'll get. Silva, when he signed to the UFC before the time on the shelf, he had some Rio Heroes deltoids. It's dude, there's no way you're fighting in America without some time off.
So Bruno Silva, I said that I wasn't as high on him as other people were, where I still liked him, and I picked him to win. I think I picked him to win by first round knockout. I picked his fight against Turman perfect. I said first round knockout for Bruno Silva, but because I said I wasn't as high as other people, I think if every prediction I've made, I've got more hate from that one than any other. I've completely botched picks. I've shit on fighters and then they did great. But saying I don't think Bruno Silva's gonna be a champion one day. Got me tons of hate on our like YouTube. Bruno Silva, he fights out of both stances. He tends to fight in blitzes where he kind of has a Yoel Romero style in him, where he's kind of stays outside, stays out. Then it's like berserker when he comes in, throwing wild looping punches. He hits extremely hard, like extremely hard. I mean, he just touches guys and they just crumble. I mean, like well determined, crumble. I mean, he's got, I don't know what it is. Like every single fight he wins by knockout. He is wild. He's open to counters because he throws looping punches from his hips. I think last time I compared him to like a Vanderlei Silva. He loves just nonstop. He'll throw like a flying knee to close the distance. Strong plum clinch. I go back to his fight with Alexander Shlemenko. I talked about he killed Alexander Shlemenko in the clinch. My one concern is his wrestling. I mean, Wellington Turman, I mean, it was a quick fight, but in the brief time they fought, we did see Silva in some brief trouble with Wellington Turman taking him down, like briefly got his back, was pinning him against the cage, stuff like that. So that is the avenue of victory, is probably turning this to a wrestling match. That's what Andrew Sanchez can do. I mean, Andrew Sanchez was a two-time NAIA national champion in wrestling. He has good entries. I mean, he early in his career, that's all he was known for was his wrestling. I mean, he won the Ultimate Fighter show just by wrestling. And if he doesn't get takedowns, he's a guy in the past. He's willing just to grind, just press you against the fence, do what Wellington Turman was doing. On the feet, though, he's really improved on the feet recently. He has a like a karate style to his game, pretty elusive. He actually fights. I shouldn't say fights similar to Silva, but he wants all the way out, then all the way leaping in kind of attack mode, which Silva likes to do too. Except that Silva, when he jumps in there, he's throwing to knock your head off, and Sanchez is landing 1 or 2 shots. He tends to throw from weird angles because of his like karate style. But Sanchez can be drawn into a brawl. And this is bad because he's eaten some heavy shots recently. I mean, he was his last fight was a very, very bad stylistic matchup on the feet for him against Muradov. If I apologize if I said his name wrong. And he got looped into a striking battle with him. So as the prediction goes, I'm gonna get hate again. I really want to take Andrew Sanchez. If is what I said about Emeev, if Emeev came to me and said he's going to wrestle 50 minutes, I would pick him. If Andrew Sanchez came to me and said I'm going to wrestle 15 minutes straight, I might take Andrew Sanchez. However, even when he does wrestle, he tends to tire himself out just as much as he tires his opponent out. And I just don't trust his chin. We've seen Sanchez get cracked. I know we've talked in the past. We think his chin got a bad rap, and then he actually it's less about his chin and more about his defense because he's been rocked many times. But Silva just cracks differently than everyone else. So I'm going to go Silva too. I'll say Sanchez does enough to turn into a wrestle match early, but eventually he makes a mistake and Silva puts him out. I'm going to say Silva does in the second round instead of the first round. And I'm probably going to get hate if he gets a first round knockout. I'm probably going to get hate. Even though he's had 2 UFC fights and I've picked him to win by brutal knockout twice now.
There you go. Two strong picks for Bruno, the baby dinosaur Silva, to get it done by KO. The only difference is which round we think he gets it done in. The 5-fight main card of UFC Fight Night 195 kicks off in the middleweight division with what sounds like an attraction from some local indie pro wrestling show. It is the Cuban Missile Crisis versus the Beverly Hills Ninja. It's Dana White's Contender Series Season 1 versus Contender Series Season 2. It is Julian Marquez versus Jordan Wright. Marquez, the 31-year-old product of Glory MMA and Fitness, is 9-2 overall. He's 3-1 since joining the UFC out of the first season of Dana White's Contender Series. Came right out of the gate with, and worth noting that he beat Phil Hawes on the Contender Series to get to the UFC in the first place. That's a win that's aged pretty well. Won his UFC debut over Darren Stewart, then dropped a pretty plodding split decision to Alessio Di Chirico. promptly took like 2.5 years off with some pretty severe injuries. I want to say it was one of his arms that was like really jacked up. But at any rate, came back to almost no expectations or fanfare this February, beat Maki Pitolo with just a fantastic come from behind anaconda choke submission, shot his shot with Miley Cyrus. You know, it was Miley Cyrus, wasn't it?
Yeah, was that the Pitolo fight or was that his last fight?
Was it the Alvey fight?
I don't know.
No, it was the Pitolo fight. Yeah, he shot a shot at the Pitolo fight, but then choked Sam Alvey all the way, you know, to the astral plane in his next fight back in April. So he's on a 2-fight win streak of, you know, pretty impressive submissions. And, you know, this will be his 3rd fight this year. He's going to take on Wright, the 30-year-old Los Angeles native who goes by the Beverly Hills Ninja, is 12-1 with 1 no contest. He's 2-1 since joining the UFC. He's a veteran of Dana White's Contender Series Season 2, but he didn't join the UFC out of that appearance because he got lamped by Anthony Hernandez. Then, you know, that was overturned when Hernandez tested positive for, I believe, cannabis. Went and won one more fight in LFA, then got signed to the UFC last summer. He won his UFC debut at light heavyweight against Ike Villanueva, just busted him up on the way to a cut stoppage in the first round. Got knocked out by Joaquin Buckley last November at UFC 255. And in his most recent appearance this past May at UFC 262, knocked out Jamie Pickett in all of 64 seconds. Both men riding a certain amount of momentum into this fight, but the odds favor Marquez to be the one who keeps it going. He's out there minus 230 or minus 235 or so. Wright is available at plus 190 as the pretty substantial underdog. I mean, it's a little bit of an oversimplification to call this a striker versus grappler matchup. You know, Marquez actually, you know, has more KO and TKO wins on his record than submissions by far, but submissions are kind of the train he's been riding recently. That might just be, you know, being under the tutelage of James Krause. You know, Glory MMA and Fitness has been one of the breakout gyms of the last 2 years, just coming seemingly out of nowhere. They send a bunch of people to the UFC on short notice, which makes sense since James Krause is always the first guy to try to step up anytime someone needs an opponent.
The coach.
Yeah, but I mean, it's been a great story for that gym. Being available and sending people up on short notice has done well for a lot of fighters during the post-COVID era, and you know, certainly for at least a few entire gyms.
I love this trend. Like, I mean, it sucks, but when the UFC starts traveling around to other, you know, cities, like I know they go to New York City next month, but you know, they start going to Boston and Chicago and Florida or something. If you got a teammate on a card and you're showing up the corner, like, and you want to get in the UFC, be on weight. Because I mean, like what Chris Curtis did.
Yeah, that's all it takes. Just be there, be available,
be ready to go. Be like, hey, I'm cutting weight with you, and hey, flyweight miss. Hey, I'm a flyweight. I'll fight him.
There you go. Jordan Wright's nickname is silly, the Beverly Hills Ninja, but hey, he is from Southern California, and he does come from a karate background that, you know, it is very obvious when he's in the cage, and his his takedown defense and range management are still a little suspect to me. I still feel as though like a strong, aggressive, durable middleweight is going to be able to, you know, weather his shots from the outside, get in, get his hands on him, dump him on the ground. And that is, I mean, that's the avenue to victory for Julian Marquez, and I expect him to get it done. And even if it takes him a while to get there, if he has to wait for Wright to get tired, if he has to wait to get the timing, just has to try 5 times to get him to the ground before he really gets him down in a position where he can go to work, I'm going to pick it to happen because Marquez survived 2.5 rounds against Maki Pitolo, who, I mean, he's a different striker than Wright, but I think he absolutely hits harder. And Marquez took everything he had for like 12 minutes and then finished the thing as soon as he had a chance. So, like, worst case scenario for me, Marquez does something like that. Best case scenario, he stings Wright with something on the feet early because he's a hard hitter himself, then gets him down and finishes this thing on the ground, either with a choke or with ground and pound. I'm going to split the difference and say Marquez gets this done by second round submission.
All right. So, yeah, this is an intriguing fight. Stylistically, it is because both guys are finishing machines, getting early success lately. Marquez is a really big middleweight. That's what stands out to me. He's just like a burly guy, not very tactical. He kind of just walks down his opponents and invites them into a brawl. He loves to brawl. He throws everything hard. He hits hard. He throws sharp hooks. Loves his overhands, hard kicks to the body. Go back to that like high kick of Phil Hawes. I mean, that was a little different as it was like a clinch to a kick as breakaway. But we've seen the power he has with a high kick. Defensively, a lot of holes though, very hittable. You mentioned like he wants to wrestle. He's like a grimy wrestling game to him where he would just clinch you, way on you. Weak defensive wrestler though, but pretty good scramble game. Good heart too. Like he won't give up. Like you take him down, he's not gonna give up a position. He's gonna continue to like mentally fight through it, get to it. Like, take him down to his butt. He's gonna work to his knee, work up to his base, work up to the cage. Just one of those kind of guys. On top, vicious ground and pound though. Like some of the best ground and pound there is. And he has a submission threat. His last 3 wins: Sam Alvey, Maki Pitolo, and Darren Stewart, all submission wins for him. Though cardio is a bit of an issue as he throws everything with power. Jordan Wright, also big for the weight class, but this guy used to be a light heavyweight. One thing I had against him on the Contender Series was that he faced such low-level competition. I mean, like a win over Ike Villanueva doesn't really do much to impress me, but beating up Jamie Pickett, like that speaks a little bit more to me. Like that's a low-level UFC talent, but he showed that Jordan Wright, I wasn't sure was a UFC talent. He showed to me that he is now. Karate background. He throws a lot of spinning attacks, but I don't think he's a good athlete. He's kind of slow. He's very hittable. He leads with his chin. His chin also could be an issue. I mean, we've seen Joaquin Buckley knock him out, which can knock out anybody. But Anthony Hernandez also starched him. Besides the weed, he has shown power on his own, and he's a little wild. But if he connects, he can put you out. Good plumb clinch though. He's a taller guy. Knees up the middle. I'd say okay wrestler. Nothing stands out. Is a submission threat, but again, nothing stands out. As far as the prediction go, this fight is a tough one to call because I'm not that high in either guy. I don't see a great athlete. I'm just gonna go with a man that has confidence because I always preach to my kids, like in sports, confidence is a huge thing. And the man who has confidence is Julian Marquez. And how do I know he has confidence? You already mentioned it. He was on national TV and he called for a date with Miley Cyrus. I mean, there's a listener right now, like, who's after listening to the show is gonna, like, I'm assuming Thursday night, go hit up the bar. They're gonna see some girl who's probably like a C at a bar, and he's gonna be scared to talk to her at some freaking dive bar in Tuscaloosa. Dude, Julian Marquez is trying to kick game to one of the biggest celebrities in the world. Like, dude, do it for Julian Marquez. Go talk to that freaking C-level girl. And then this is how we're interested. Me and Man are gonna make matches tonight. Once you hook up with her, take a picture with it, send it to us, and be like, "Yo, we took your advice. 5 years from now, this is your wife." Just in all because Julian Marquez beat Maki Pitolo. That's how much I care about this fight. I'd rather talk about Miley Cyrus and help some listener out get a girl. Anyways, calling out Miley Cyrus for a date is good enough for me. Give me Marquez. I'll say he gets a takedown, wins on the ground. And honestly, I hope he keeps this trend going. Like, I didn't know if he called for a date after the Sam Alvey fight or if it was a Sam Alvey fight. Like, I hope Miley Cyrus, he didn't get a date with Miley Cyrus, so go to, like, the next celebrity. Like, call for a date with one of the Kardashians or call Scarlett Johansson. Shit, shoot your shot with Oprah. I don't give a shit. Like, or just,
what if he just told Alvey after that fight, "Hey, your wife is in me DMs."
You know what? Sam Alvey's all right. Let's not go.
I mean, his wife would have been like right there.
In fairness, his wife is a celebrity, so that would fit the trend. I don't know if I want to go to Sam Alvey's wife, but you know what? And if Wright wins, He should call for a date with Miley Cyrus. Like, you beat him, now you call for it. Like that'll be like, like literal champion, but like literal Miley Cyrus boyfriend. Like, whoever beats Jordan Wright, they get their turn.
There should be a BMF belt, like the Miley Cyrus belt,
There you go. Anyways,
All right.
so I'll take Julian Marquez by wrecking ball.
In which round?
First round.
All right. There you go. Julian Marquez believes in himself. Keith Schillen and I believe in you. Yes, you. Up next on the UFC Vegas 40 main card is a flyweight matchup between Manon Fiorot and Mayra Bueno Silva. Fiorot, the 31-year-old French woman, is 7-1 overall. She's 2-0 since joining the UFC earlier this year. She debuted with a second-round TKO win over Victoria Leonardo at UFC on ESPN, Chiesa versus Magny. Came back with another second-round knockout win over Tabitha Ricci in June at UFC Fight Night Rosenstrike versus Sakai. She's taking on Bueno Silva. The 30-year-old Brazilian is 7-1-1 overall. She is 2-1-1 since joining the UFC out of Dana White's Contender Series Brazil. And here is your piece of trivia for the day. Mayra Bueno Silva is the first fighter ever signed out of the Brazilian edition of Dana White's Contender Series. Like, I think there were two signed that episode, but she was the first fight of the night. So she is technically the first signee out of Dana White's Contender Series Brazil. And hey, a couple of years later, she's still in the UFC. However, she is not favored to get it done this Saturday. She is plus 180 as the underdog. Fiorot, minus 220 or minus 225 or so as the comfortable favorites. I doubted Fiorot out of the gate. I picked against her more or less on principle in her UFC debut, simply because, if you're a fighter with fewer than 10 fights, you're coming with a real clean record out of Europe, and you are a physical specimen. I mean, I feel bad a little bit saying this, but I'm going to wait until I see you after, on an out of competition test, in competition test. Like, I'm going to wait through your first fight, because I've seen too many fighters just not look the same physically, and frankly, Ariane Lipski's one of them. It's taken her a long time to get back to the killer that she was in her last few fights in KSW. So I picked against Fiorot. I was dead wrong. And 2 fights in, I'm just, I'm excited to have her in the division. She's a physical specimen. She's an outstanding boxer who's also comfortable wrestling and being on the ground if it takes that. And she's going against someone in Mayra Bueno Silva that still mostly gets by on the feet on aggression and volume. I think Fiorot's just going to piece her up on the feet. I don't know if Silva will try to get it to the ground. I expect she will at some point. She's better on the ground than on the feet, but I'm not sure she's going to be able to get it there when she wants to. I think the difference in footwork, the difference in physical strength is going to be substantial for Fiorot. And yeah, I think this is just going to be a showcase fight for her. I don't know if she gets the finish, but give me Manon Fiorot by just a one-sided, like, bruising decision where Silva's face is all busted up by the end of this.
Yeah, so before I make my pick on this fight, I just want to go back to all the Bruno Silva fans that hate me. Listen, I picked that guy to win. I'm sure if you like Bruno Silva, you have to like Manon Fiorot too. Ben didn't pick Fiorot, so take all that hate over to Ben instead. So, anyways, back to this fight. So is
Uros Medic fighting this weekend? Because I pick him to win if he is.
Inside joke right there. So Bueno Silva versus Fiorot. This is my favorite fight on the entire card. Like I said earlier, there was another fight I was looking forward to. Just stylistically, just 2 girls I actually like. I'll start with Silva. She's a kickboxer, a lot of stance switches. She just walks down her opponents. She's a little flat-footed though, but she has tight boxing. She doesn't throw in volume until she gets into her range, and that's when she unloads with hard combos, good power. She does tend to chase the knockout, what I don't like, instead of just letting the knockout flow to her. But she has some good setups, good teep kicks. She'll throw in some spinning back elbows, spinning back fists. She's strong on the plum clinch. That's because when you look at her, she's a very physically strong woman. She's a weak defensive wrestler. I mean, go back to the Marina Moroz fight. Like, that's how Moroz won. She kind of out-volumed her and took her down. But she is a submission threat. The one issue I have is she's very inconsistent. Like one fight she looks like a killer, and the next fight she looks terrible. I think she's the killer side. I believe in her a little bit, but then you have Manon Fiorot, southpaw, very fast hands. She's technically sound striker. Nice pop in her hands. Nice pop in her strikes. Good movement, good footwork. Her footwork really stands out to me of everything you do. Because I've said this before, but I truly believe it. I believe the best strikers have good footwork. Like I believe, like your foundation of being a good striker is footwork. Footwork's the most important thing when it comes to striking. She can land strikes while backing up, which is really impressive if you try to pressure. She's good at cutting angles on her attack, so she'll come in and then she'll sidestep an angle. Little things she does that stand out. She can be gun shy though. Like I've seen her in fights where she's not throwing enough, which is an issue. But when she's adding her kicks to her game, a lot of good quality calf kicks, teep kicks, push kicks, variety in her attacks. She's not just a striker though. She'll add in a takedown with her strikings, nice entries, good top control, heavy pressure. I said that I believe that Bruno Silva has a killer in her. The problem is, I think Manon Fiorot is an even better killer. I believe in her even more. This is a girl that I was big on coming in. I'm still on it. This is a dope fight. I expect both girls to throw down. I think we're going to have some really good exchanges. I just think Fiorot is just better everywhere. I think she's got more power. I think she's faster. I think she's more tactical. I think she's longer. I think she might even be the better wrestler. Fiorot's a girl I really like. She's one of my favorite people, one of my favorite female fighters in the entire UFC. I'm riding this hype train. Give me Fiorot. I give her by a dominant decision.
There you go. Two strong picks for Manon Fiorot to get the job done on Saturday. Third from the top at UFC Fight Night 195. It is a lightweight matchup that will be another record setter the moment they step into the cage, as Jim Miller and Erick Gonzalez will combine for the greatest disparity in UFC experience between two fighters in a UFC fight ever. Miller, the 38-year-old from New Jersey, is 32-16 with one no contest overall. He's 21-15 with one no contest in the UFC. He'll be taking on Gonzalez, who will be making his UFC debut. So for those counting at home, it is 37-0 in UFC appearances. The man they call the Ghost Pepper, 29-year-old out of Torrance, California, is 14-5 overall. Has fought all over, but primarily made his bones in Combate Americas back before it was Combate Global. He fought most recently at LXF, which is a California promotion, in August, taking a unanimous decision over Samuel Alvarez. That earned him the call-up. Odds on this one do favor Miller. He is a -210 favorite. Gonzalez +175 on the comeback. Man, so Jim Miller, there's just two left now. 2 years ago, there were four men just basically tossing the UFC record book as far as like career numbers go, like a hot potato. Jim Miller, Donald Cerrone, Diego Sanchez, and Joe Lozon. And Lozon's kind of fallen behind. Sanchez is out, so it's really just a two-man race now between Miller and Cerrone. And both guys, I mean, they're still not an easy out for most people, but both guys are just a ghost of what they were. And I said this, ahead of Miller's last fight against Joe Solecki, because I picked him to beat Vince Pichel in his fight before that. I learned my lesson, and against Joe Solecki, I said, and it's not like, I was, again, not like I was discovering gravity in saying this, but what Jim Miller has left is aggression, really opportunistic grappling, and 1 round worth of cardio. That's literally all he has left. Like, he's no longer a UFC level striker. He's no longer really a UFC level wrestler, either offensively or defensively. And where he used to be just one of the toughest, grittiest guys in the sport, the spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is 38 years old and has been through 37 UFC fights, like a bout of Lyme disease that went undiagnosed for years. Just Jim Miller, the tires are bald and the car burns as much oil as it does gas. Like we're in the last like the last act of Jim Miller's career. And the only thing that makes me just kind of like smile and talk fondly about it is that he's not getting his brains beat in every time out. Like he's just, getting kind of worn down by guys he would have schooled in his day that are just able to outlast him and counter what few weapons he has left. I can't believe they found a guy that's a 2-1 underdog against him. Like, I mean, I wouldn't make him a 2-1 favorite over anyone in the UFC lightweight division, which is why they kind of had to go sign someone new. But against Erick Gonzalez, it's the exact same thing. Like, Jim Miller has one round to find a submission, or just pin Gonzalez down and ground and pound him out, or at least get a 10-8 round so that this thing probably ends up a draw. Even though he's a 2-1 favorite, I've seen Erick Gonzalez fight a lot of times. I don't think Jim Miller's going to tap him out in the first round. And so for me, the math is as simple as that. He might win the first round like he did against Vince Pichel, and I can't remember, but I think he might have against Joe Solecki as well. And then the rest of it is just the most, how this movie ends. Give me Erick Gonzalez. Unanimous decision, 29-28. That's my upset special.
Yeah, I get it, man. So first of all, I'll adjust the odds because Jim Miller should not be a 2-1 favorite against anybody in the UFC. I'll say this about Jim Miller. I get he's now taking the sole possession of the record, I believe, most appearances, which is kind of funny. As you mentioned, one guy's making his debut, the other guy's making his record-breaking appearance. I want Jim Miller to have the appearances record simply because down Cerrone has other stuff. You know what I mean? Like, he's more known to the casual fans. He had his fight against Conor McGregor. He's for the title. He's headlined UFCs. He's got the most knockouts, I believe, or most finishes. I think
he has the most finishes.
Most wins. He has the most wins.
Most wins.
Yeah. Like, he has other records. Like, this is all Jim Miller has. So I'll say this kind of I've said this before, but I'll give like a little hint how I do film study. I have like an ongoing like database of notes on fighters. I keep like a Word document with fighters' names, and I kind of have it alphabetical order. Then I go back in when a fighter's, again, we're doing the card. I pull that fighter's notes, and then I watch 2 or 3 of the most recent fights to see if anything in my notes needs to be updated and changed and whatnot. I haven't updated notes on Jim Miller in a really long time, simply because like I don't want to watch him because it's sad to watch. Everything I say nice about him, it's all declining. He's a savvy veteran. He's never been a great athlete. He's more technically sound than a good athlete. He in his prime, he was well rounded, but he's lost like 2, 3, 4 steps. His speed is all but gone. He's always lacked head movement. He has a good chin. He's got to be tough. He's got to be in it. I think only Dan Hooker's has put him out, and that was a couple of years back.
Dude, just sorry to interrupt, but real
quick.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's like barely 3 years ago. Like 3 years ago, this guy was fighting Dan Hooker and Charles Oliveira.
Yeah, now he's fighting Erick Gonzalez, and Jim Miller will make the UFC Hall of Fame because everybody makes the UFC Hall of Fame eventually. I mean, other than Frank Shamrock, everybody makes the UFC. As long as you're friends with Dana White, you're going to get in. But I just don't want to see him fight anymore. He is a good grappler. He's good as a wrestler. He's a good submission threat. I wrote down 7 minutes of cardio. I think actually that's something I probably need to update. That it's going down. It's probably more than 5 minutes now, maybe 4 minutes. It's going to continue getting lower and lower. He is a submission threat. He can lock on a guillotine, like it's always been a strength of his. But it's not going to be long. Now, Erick Gonzalez, he's a Combates America veteran, but he's lost some. You look at his record; he's lost some low-level UFC talent. Humberto Bondinet, Rafi Garcia, like these are low-level UFC talent, and they beat him up. He switches stance a lot. He's aggressive on the feet. He's a pressure striker. He's kind of slow though. Like his hands, he drops his hands. He throws looping punches from his hips. A lot of arm punches, doesn't generate a lot of power because of that. Likes to throw kicks to the body from the southpaw stance when he's in there. doesn't check leg kicks. He is a submission threat, and the reason why he's a submission threat is because he's on his back a lot because his wrestling is terrible. Like some of I don't know if he knows what a sprawl is. He just I think he thinks like if you shoot it on his hips, you automatically has to fall directly on his back because that's usually about 99% of the time that's what happens. So as far as prediction goes, dude, can I pass? Can I take a pass? It just comes down to is Jim Miller like all the way complete shot. If Jim Miller's prime was probably 10 years ago, you know what I mean? Even then, what was the ceiling of Jim Miller? Top 12, top 14 range guy? Like he was never a top 10 guy. He was never.
I think there was a moment when he probably was when really only like Edgar and Maynard and Penn were ahead of him. But that was 2008.
Yeah, okay, so 2008. So you're talking God more than that. So 13 years ago. And in fairness to Jim Miller, like I don't mean to. I'm not bad. I'm a Jim Miller fan. Like This is why I don't want to see him in front anymore. Like who isn't a Jim Miller fan? He's your like. Yeah, I explain. He's just like your every man's man who shows up to work and he's always in it. He's willing to fight everyone. He's got huge balls. Like Jim Miller's the man. Yep. And I'm not trying to dog him saying like he never was a top 10 guy or never a top 5 guy. It's just because it was the weight class he was in. It's like you mentioned, BJ Penn and Diego Sanchez and Frankie Edgar and Gray Maynard and Anthony Pettis and Rafael Dos Anjos, and Benson Henderson and all these guys in that era. Like there was a good era of lightweights, and it's always been a Clay Guida, the Nate Diaz.
Yeah,
it's just always been a loaded weight class. That's kind of it's been a little bit of a downfall. Donald Cerrone, another one. But that I don't need 2008 Jim Miller to beat Erick Gonzalez. I need 2019 Jim Miller. 2019 Jim Miller wins. I just don't know if he's fallen this far down. I can't believe I'm doing this in 2021, but I'm still going to take Miller. I think he's completely shot, but I think he's going to win the first round with his wrestling. I'm hoping he can get another takedown in the second round and win that. So give me Miller by decision. However, I want to point this out. I would not be shocked. I don't know what the odds are for a draw. And if you're a real degenerate when it comes to gambling and stuff, you might want to throw some money on a draw because I could see Jim Miller win the two first rounds and be so gassed and Gonzalez just putting it on him in the last round and getting a 10-8 round.
Or getting a 10-8 in the first round, like I said, he might, and then losing the second and third. They're two different ways.
Oh yeah, that's another way. Yes, you get two options. So I could see a draw. So I almost picked it as a draw for fun, but yeah, give me Jim Miller. But I'm gonna regret this pick.
All right, and just here, let me take a look here. Fight is a draw. You can get plus 5,000, 50-1 odds. There you go.
There you go.
Turn $2 into a lovely steak dinner for two, and a bottle of wine.
Hey,
there you go.
You know what? The guy who's at the bar gonna take that girl. That could be your first date if you throw $2 on the draw.
Come on, it's a sign. Somebody do this. Bet responsibly. Literally only bet $2 in this, please. And if you thought our conversation about Jim Miller was a little on the somber side, buckle up, because our co-main event will have us talking about the last fighter on UFC roster who was in the UFC before Dana White. And on top of that, he has 312 losses by knockout. It is Andrei Arlovski versus Carlos Felipe. Arlovski, the 42-year-old Belarusian, is 31-20 with 2 no contests overall. He is 20-14 with 1 no contest across multiple stints in the UFC. Obviously, he won the title and had a very historically important trilogy with Tim Sylvia back in 2005. Left to go big game hunting, had the famous loss to Fedor Emelianenko, made his way back to the UFC long after Everybody figured he was done and a spent force, and yet here he still is, having won 3 of his last 4, 4 of his last 6 at age 42. And this time he will be welcoming Carlos Felipe, who is a member of the youth movement in the UFC heavyweight division that Keith and I have talked about a lot over the last year or so. 26 years old, out of Brazil. He's 11-1 overall. He's 3-1 since joining the UFC last summer. So not only doing well, but keeping a busy schedule. Lost his UFC debut to Sergey Spivak in competitive, if slow-paced, majority decision. That was last July. Since then, he's rattled off 3 straight wins over Yorgan De Castro, Justin Tafa, and most recently in June at UFC 263, Jake Collier, whom he defeated by split decision at UFC 263. Odds on this one, close to a pick'em. Felipe actually just the slightest of favorites. He's minus 115. Arlovski not quite available in the plus money as of Wednesday. He's minus 105. Keith, I'll tell you this much. 10 years ago, Andrei Arlovski might have been literally the last, like the least likely high-level fighter in the sport that I would have picked to still be a relevant fighter in 2021. Just considering how much his game had always run off of elite athleticism, especially for heavyweight. Just he came off as an A-level athlete always. And then how much of his ceiling had been defined by the fragility of his chin and, frankly, his psyche. This is a guy who's been, before it was, I'm not saying it's cool to do now, but before anyone did it, this is a guy that just gave the rawest accounts of like literally putting a gun to his head and playing Belarusian roulette, after in the midst of one of his losing streaks. Like, he's always been very real and very raw about that stuff. This was not a guy that anything about him said, yeah, I'll still be taking dudes down, in 2021. I'll still be probably a win or 2 away from like being in the rankings discussion again. Like,
he's in the co-main event.
He's in the co-main event. And he's the one guy that, like, as everything's sort of orbited around him, this has always been like second or third from the top. Like, he's still out there. And
he's won
part
3
of
of
it,
4.
He's won 3 of 4. He's won 4 of 6. The guys he's beating are not complete chumps. Like, he's won 4 of 6, fighting a much tougher slate of opposition than Carlos Felipe has, because his name is big enough that they can't give him true softballs. So, they pit him against the guys they are hoping will do well. Felipe Lins, Tanner Boser, Chase Sherman, the guys that they're hoping, hey, you can make your name off of this legend and then move up. And he keeps beating them. And part of it is that he, a lot like Alistair Overeem, has adapted his game to work around his limitations. It's not as fan-friendly, but it's ended up with a lot less of him staring up at the lights. Second part of it is what he seems to have undergone what Jay Petrie calls CRT, which is chin replacement therapy. It used to be that just a slight breeze would put this guy out. And that's something that doesn't typically get better as you plow through your 30s. But all of a sudden, he's proven he can take a shot from UFC heavyweights. Who knows how it happened, but it's happened, and we're here. And in the last 2 or 3 years, again, in his 40s, since he's turned 40, the only people that have made it look easy against Arlovski are like Tom Aspinall, who's, I mean, you and I both think of as probably a future title contender, and Jairzinho Rozenstruik, who's a title contender right now. Like, we think he's, kind of bumping up against his own ceiling, but he's been a top 5 guy. The rest of them, it's been tough fights, and he's winning more than he loses. I'm at a loss to explain it. But Carlos Felipe, to me, is a guy, another one that is sort of cut out for Arlovski to look good against. Like, Felipe, as he came into the UFC, the interesting thing to me was that for just an absolute barrel-chested tank of a man, he's surprisingly nimble. Like, he's a guy who's like surprisingly athletic and coordinated for
Fast.
a dude who fast for a dude who clearly cuts weight to make 265. And that has followed him to the UFC. But in Brazil, he was knocking everybody out, and the real knockout power has not followed him to the UFC. All 3 of his wins have been decisions. All of them have been pretty competitive. And he's sort of, to me, he's kind of hit his ceiling as a guy who he's brought, what got him to the dance, but hasn't really improved on it much. Like, he lost to Sergey Spivak. There's no shame in that. Spivak is a fringe contender himself, but I think he'd lose to Spivak again if they fought tomorrow. He is exactly the guy that Arlovski, you know what, he can afford to make a mistake against because he probably won't get flatlined by the first clean punch he eats from him. I think Arlovski can probably take Felipe down if he wants to. And I think Arlovski, even as many steps as he's lost, and he hasn't lost quite as many as Miller, but he's no longer the elite fast twitch athlete he was, in 2006. I still think he's a better technical striker than Felipe. He's more defensively sound. Like, Arlovski is the slightest of underdogs here, so I won't bother to call it my upset special. That's Erick Gonzalez over Jim Miller. But I'm feeling Arlovski in this one. I think he wins a decision, turns away yet another of the next generation of heavyweights, and the UFC continues to have a problem on its hands.
Yeah. So comparing Arlovski to Jim Miller, because I mean it's fair to do that, as they're both, Jim Miller is complete shot. Arlovski's not, and that's my point. Like Arlovski's like Alex Volkanovski right now compared to Jim Miller or freaking Brandon Moreno or something. Because as you mentioned, like he's still competitive. He's the boxer. He always has been. He's a counter striker, high guard defense, tight boxing. Though his hands have really slowed. Like that, when you go back to when he was knocking out Justin Eilers and Paul Benatel, the thing that stood out to him was obviously power, but also hand speed, being a good athlete, being the better athlete. That's not really the case anymore. Like he's a low output, really less engaged to protect that chin. His chin has been a roller coaster where you said like chin reconstruction surgery. It was gone, then it came back, then it was gone again, and now it's like suddenly it's back. He's not getting knocked out. I still don't trust it. Like it seems like you and Jay do. I just think he's kind of had been in the right place, right time. Hasn't had the, show it against Francis Ngannou. Then I'll believe it a little bit more. He has conserved, like his output is out there to kind of like conserve his cardio. Like he's done the complete opposite that Jim Miller has done, where Jim Miller blows his load in the first round. Arlovski's found a way to do it for 15 minutes to survive. Of course, it's not fair to compare a heavyweight to a lightweight. Like it's just different. Like you can't not go all out at lightweight. Obviously, it's a much faster game. The other thing about Arlovski is his power is completely gone. I said this last time. He hasn't got a KO since he knocked out Travis Brown. That was 6 years ago. He's had 17 fights since that knockout. But his power is just gone. If Andrei Arlovski wins this fight, it's going to be a boring fight. It's going to either be a low kickboxing match where he's just a little more technically sound, or it's going to be grapple heavy, but like boring grappling. A lot of clinching, pressing against the cage. Arlovski can do that. He's an intelligent grappler. He's a good wrestler. No major holes in the grappling game. As far as Felipe, you were being very nice to him. You're saying like big barrel chested. Like that is I am an analyst for SureDog. I have to be professional. Guy at the bar watching College Lewis supposed to be like, who the hell's that fat guy who's in the UFC? Like that's what they describe him as. But why I want to say this is he fights completely different than what his body suggests. Like you would, if you saw a guy like that and you said he got in the UFC, you go, oh man, then he's got to be slow. But if he must have just big haymaking power, and if he touches you, you die. Peak Roy Nelson when he had the big, I mean he still does, big belly, but Roy Nelson throws those big haymakers, he catches you, he knock you out. That's not Felipe. He has no power for heavyweight. He's a bob and weave, fast, good output, high cardio, fast hands, technically sound boxer. He uses feints well, works behind a jab, loves his lead jab over him, right? Though he does kind of telegraph by loading up, though, as I mentioned, he doesn't have the power. He'll dig to the party, thudding leg kicks. Like, that's his game. Now, not a grappler at all. Terrible grappler, but, like, it's just funny. He's completely different than you expect. Like, he's much faster than you'd guess. So, as far as the prediction goes, this one is surprisingly tough. Like, Arlovski should look to clinch, to slow down Felipe, make it a grinding affair. I wouldn't be surprised if he does that at all. Felipe, a few fights ago when he was coming to UFC, and I did tape study on him, I thought Felipe was the absolute worst UFC heavyweight on the entire roster. He was the guy I was making jokes like. A few fights later, he's in the co-main event of a UFC, and I can't believe this. A few fights later, I'm picking him to upset Andrei Arlovski.
No, he's the favorite.
Oh, he's a favorite.
Barely. It's like minus 115,
Okay.
minus 105.
Right.
Like they're
Well,
close
I
to a
think
pick 'em.
Arlovski's done. I'm expecting the wheels to fall off. I just feel Felipe outworks him to a decision. This might not be an upset by me picking Felipe, but it sure feels like it's like I don't know. Like he should be Arlovski should be the betting favorite, but it just I don't know why it just feels like I'm taking a massive upset, even though he's the favorite. So, anyways, put this down as my upset special, anyways, even though he's the favorite.
It'll be by far the biggest. I mean, dude, he's won 3 straight, but Jorge De Castro and Justin Toff, like De Castro's already gone. If Toffa's not gone, he's close. And I mean, Collier's been a fun story, but yeah, I mean, this again is the UFC.
I think I take Collier to beat Arlovski too right now, though. I'm done with all. It's just Arlovski's probably still more technically sound. I mean, it's kind of funny that I said Jim Miller is completely shot, and I picked him to win. And I said Arlovski still has something left in him, and then I took Felipe to beat him. I don't know. I'm having a rough night.
This is a rough night of fights to talk about, man. But there you go. Some slightly dissenting opinions on this one because neither of us have any idea what the hell's going to happen. That brings us to the headline fight, the makeshift main event between Aspen Ladd and Norma Dumont. Ladd, the 26-year-old Californian, is 9-1 overall. She's 4-1 since joining the UFC as an undefeated prospect out of Invicta Fighting Championships. Won her first 3 fights against Lena Landsberg, Tanya Evinger, and Sajara Eubanks. Dropped the controversial 15-second knockout loss to Jermaine Durandamy. Came back with a dominant third-round mauling of Yana Kunitskaya. That was back in December of 2019. Since then, she's been out with a knee injury that required reconstructive surgery. Delayed her comeback. She tried to come back 2 weeks ago. Failed to make weight sufficiently alarmingly that the fight was called off. Here she is in a main event, a weight class up, regardless of how you feel about how she got there. And I know we spent a good amount of time talking about it off the top. Here it is nonetheless. And she is the headliner. She'll be taking on Dumont. The 31-year-old Brazilian is 6-1 overall. She's 2-1 since joining the UFC out of Brazilian promotions like Jungle Fight and Shudo Brazil. She dropped her debut to Megan Anderson, first round ground and pound TKO. That was at featherweight, obviously. Since then, had tried to drop to bantamweight, beat Ashley Evans Smith, but failed to make weight by 4.5 pounds or something. So basically halfway to featherweight. Then a surprising and important win for her in May. She took on recent featherweight title challenger Felicia Spencer and won a split decision over her at UFC Fight Night Font versus Garbrandt. That catapulted Dumont really directly into the title discussion in the featherweight division, at least. She was scheduled to fight Holly Holm. And honestly, if she'd beaten Holm, she might have been in line for a shot at Amanda Nunes's featherweight title whenever she chose to defend it next. Despite the bad optics of 2 weeks ago, and despite the short notice nature of this call-up, Ladd is the favorite to get it done in the main event this Saturday. She's minus 135. Dumont is out there plus 115 or so as the slight underdog. Keith, we talked about it a little bit off the top. Ladd is just now adjusting to the possibility of a 5-round fight, where Dumont has been preparing for a 5-round fight all along. But Dumont has been preparing to face a fighter who's about as different stylistically from Aspen Ladd as you could possibly get. Holly Holm, a legendary MMA striker, even leaving aside her boxing career, is one of the best, strikers in MMA history in the divisions in which she has labored, but nonetheless, has always had an underrated wrestling game to turn back onto, which is how she beat Megan Anderson. Couldn't be much more different than Ladd and her like rabid Wolverine, like throw you on the ground and beat you up approach. Does the matchup, does the change in from what they were expecting, like, does it favor one woman more than the other? And how do you see this fight playing out? Who wins?
So before we talk about the X's and O's, I'm going to answer that question about the change in a second. I just want to say this. I know some people, like, I get it. They might fast forward right to our prediction. Don't watch every single fight. We get it. These shows are long. If you want to hear what we said about the changing of the main event, Aspen Ladd getting bumped to a main event, even though she missed weight, go to the introduction part of this. What Ben has labeled. We did address that, so I don't want you to think we ignored that. Who does the change favor? I'll say this. I think Norma Dumont has a much better chance of winning now than she did when she was facing Holly Holm. I think Holly Holm was a very bad stylistic matchup for her. I think Holly Holm was going to win. And I didn't do tape study on the Holly Holm fight. Obviously, this was before I started doing tape study. Just off the top of my head, I was probably going to go with Holly Holm. As far as Ladd, I mean, like going. You mean like going from Macy Chasson to Norma Dumont?
Yeah.
I think it became harder for her. I think it's a harder matchup for her. Aspen Ladd. So I'm going to say this about Aspen Ladd. Like, we just broke it down 2 weeks ago. We made a prediction. Nothing changed. So I'm going to basically read the same exact notes that I did 2 weeks ago. One thing with Aspen Ladd moving up in weight, the almost passing out, the making weight twice in 2 week period thing. One thing that we keep forgetting is, and it's not really became a story in this. This is Aspen Ladd's first fight back from a torn ACL. Like we said that before. She's only 26 years old, which I'd love. So you obviously have a lot more confidence in 26-year-old Aspen Ladd returning than if she was 36. But it's still something very, very intriguing, something to keep in the back of your mind. She's very physically strong, Aspen Ladd, and that was at 135. But I actually think that's going to help her at 145 because I think the one, because of her age, she might not even got into her power years left, but also not depleting her body like she was at 135 at 145. Now, you talked about her already being large and that making 145 is still going to be tough. Yeah, but not like 135. So I think the power is going to go with her. As far as striking, her striking is very raw. She's a little stiff with it. Her hand speed needs to improve. She doesn't really move her head. But she does stay tight, to her credit. And at 26, this is kind of the age where you see jumps in striking ability, or I should say jumps in the area that you're most weak at. If it's a grappler, same thing. Or if it's a striker, same thing with grappling. Aspen Ladd's going to want to get this fight to clinch. She's very strong in the clinch. She's got good clinch takedowns. And the best part of the game is what happens when she hits the ground. Extremely good top pressure, insane ground and pound. Like, she has this mean streak in Aspen Ladd that I think is what makes her exciting. Like, she wants to kill you. She has like a little, like, Aspen Ladd, if you dated her, like, she has that crazy ex-girlfriend or crazy girl in her. Like, you say you're going to be home by 9, like, it's 9:03 and she's standing in the middle of the driveway. Like, she has a little bit of that in her. Or at least that's what she shows when she fights. Like, I'm pretty convinced that Aspen Ladd's middle name is like Tiffany or Jessica or Paige or something like that. Anyways, everything about her being like going like ham on the ground, I mean all that as a compliment. like I love that. I love when this, like, Aspen Ladd, like, little sweet, kind of soft spoken. You see her interview, she's like soft spoken, and then just like fits of rage comes on her, and she's almost foaming from the mouth when she's.
It's a good point because, like, Macy Barber has a similar mean streak.
Yeah.
But Macy Barber has a like brash personality and kind of crazy eyes. Like, where Ladd's a little more low key.
Yeah. Now Norma Dumont, I'll say this. She won a split decision with Felicia Spencer. I gave it to her. I know some people gave it to Felicia Spencer. I thought she won. Norma Dumont is better than I thought she was when she first came to UFC. especially against the Megan Anderson performance. Like she looks pretty good recently. On the feet, a lot of stance switches. Very poised striker, very calm. You can see that she's like thinking out there. When you throw strikes at her, she sees. She has good vision. She sees the attack. She gets out of the way pretty well, which is surprising considering she's fairly flat-footed. But offensively, she got some good tools. She's fast hands, good power jab, throws a lot of combinations. She has when she wants to counter strike come out, she has a really good like step back out of range, and then pounce back forward with the right hand. It's similar to what I say when people pull punches, but it's more of a get out, and then the opponent who attacked with the combination almost calms, and then she comes back in on a count. So it's like I'm defense. Nope, I'm actually offense. It's really nice. It's kind of step back right hand. She rips the body. She parries punches, which I like a lot better than pillaring. If you don't know what I mean by parrying, parrying is when someone throws punches, you kind of block with your hands and you kind of push. You have a downward pushing motion, so you go over the top of their punches. That's when I was boxing. That's what I used to do. That was my kind of go-to. A lot of calf kicks. She's very physically strong woman. And that stood out to me in the Felicia Spencer fight, which I didn't think she was strong for the division, especially because there's a girl that was recently dropped down to 135 or didn't make the weight, but was trying to fight at 135. She's an underrated wrestler. She's got a takedown in every one of her UFC fights, including a good grappler in Felicia Spencer, and she showed strong defense against Felicia Spencer. Though she did get taken down at the end of the fight, and when she was taken down, she struggled to get back up. That seemed more like a cardio thing than like a technique. As far as prediction goes, I have no feel for this fight. Like and that happens a lot. It's probably at least one or two fights in every card where I don't have a good feeling or I don't I'm gonna be wrong. Whoever pick, I'm gonna be wrong. This is about as 50-50 as I go. Ladd thrives on being the stronger bully, and I don't know if she can do that against Dumont. But Dumont's gonna have the striking advantage. She's quicker, she's faster, she's more technically sound. But Ladd has an it factor to her, where she seems like she can will herself to victories. And I think that's what she's gonna do here. It's probably gonna be the hardest clinch battle that she's had in her career, but I still expect her to win. And I still like Felicia Spencer found a way to get Noma Dumont down, and the fact that she didn't spring right back up, that's cool against Felicia Spencer, who's more of like a jiu-jitsu before punish you. That's not good against Ladd. You stay down on Ladd. Ladd's gonna butcher your face. The extra 10 minutes concerns me. Like adding, she was supposed to fight 15 minutes. Now it's going up to 25 minutes. That's concerning. The back. There's a lot of things that concern me about this fight, but all in all, I'm still going to go with Ladd because to me, she still seems like the more blue chip prospect. So give me Ladd, but with no confidence.
Yeah, I thank you for that breakdown. Like, if they were fighting at featherweight, like planned 3 months out on full camps, expecting a 5-round fight, expecting each other, Ladd would be a real easy pick here. Because I agree with you that that Dumont is probably the better technical striker than Ladd. Like, Ladd's striking is really raw and just driven by her aggression and athleticism, and really just a means to an end. Really just wants to get inside and get her hands on you. But even if Ladd gets hit on the way in, the thing that Dumont doesn't really have is like stop you in your tracks power. So, I mean, even if she like lands something cleanly on Ladd on the way in, I don't think it's going to deter Ladd from at least trying to hoist her up and dump her. It does give me pause that Dumont has made marked improvements from fight to fight. Like I think in describing her fight with Megan Anderson, I was thinking of Anderson's fight with Zara Ferran dos Santos because, Dumont and dos Santos debuted at the same time. They were obviously looking for any featherweights to, influx into the division. But no, like Anderson versus dos Santos is where Anderson like just ran game on her on the ground. With Dumont versus Anderson, it was Dumont was completely unprepared for the reach. Like I remember her just throwing punches and kicks that just fell like a foot short of the mark because she did not know how to get inside on this 6 foot tall woman. And then Anderson tagged her with one shot that just dropped her to the seat of the pants and the thing was over. Like I figured Norma Dumont was not long for the UFC. She comes back, she beats Ashley Evans Smith. That Ashley Evans Smith had been on a long layoff and crime spree and was never a great fighter.
She was moving up, and wait, wasn't Evan Smith moving back up too?
Yeah, she was moving back up. Dumont blew weight also, so you had a former flyweight against a 140-pound woman. But I mean, nonetheless, like she beat her and like looked way better than she did against Anderson. And then again, she looked like a completely transformed fighter against Spencer, who, thin division or not, was a recent title contender and probably a top 5 featherweight. Like she's still improving from fight to fight, but the places where she's improving and the places that she can improve, just I don't think they're going to stop Ladd from doing what she wants to do here. Like I said off the top, because you and I talked about this, neither of us is super comfortable with this booking, but what I would call a win coming out of this is that Ladd's performance convinces her to stay at featherweight. Like that she feels good physically, that she finds that, hey, I am physically strong enough to throw around another woman closer to my own size. It wouldn't surprise me if she has trouble getting the fight to the ground and maybe gets some stuff she doesn't like from Dumont on the feet. Maybe she even like loses a round or two in the early going. But I think there's a spot there where before she gasses out, because I expect that she will get tired before Dumont, before she tires out, she will figure out a way to get Dumont on the ground. And I haven't seen anything from either woman that makes me think that fight is ever getting back to the feet after that point. It might make it to the end of the round, but it's not getting back to the feet. Give me Aspen Ladd by TKO on the ground. I'm going to say late in the second round, and it'll be a fun fight while it goes. And, we'll kind of see what shakes out from here. In a strange way, this is almost a more significant fight for this division going forward than if Dumont had been fighting Holly Holm, because that would have either just, confirmed what we already knew or just, anyway. Yeah, so give me Aspen Ladd by second round TKO. Any other thoughts on this fight or on this card?
No, but I got another question. I need 2 more predictions from you. Give me the winners of the Bellator semifinals.
Oh, definitely give me Nemkov over Anglickas. I have no way to prove it except by MMA math as people cross over back and forth. But on talent, I think Vadim Nemkov is probably one of the 3 or 4 best light heavyweights on the planet right now.
Yes, I agree.
And on the other one, man, here's the thing. Obviously, Bellator would love to have Corey Anderson win and, to get a new face to fight Nemkov. But Corey Anderson, he is probably the best light heavyweight on the planet that Ryan Bader has this plausible an avenue to victory over.
Yeah, okay.
I favor Anderson, but it would be less of a surprise if Bader beat him than just about any other light heavyweight in the top 10, except maybe Phil Davis, because he's already beaten him twice.
So you're taking
Anderson Nemkov. And Nemkov.
Yep. All right. So I'll say this about Anglickas. I think he was one of the 8 best guys Bellator had. Like, he should have been in the field to begin with. Didn't have the name value, but it's a tougher fight than people expect. But yeah, I'm taking Nemkov. And there's a reason why I'm asking you this. I haven't given out my best bet of the evening. Ryan Bader is an underdog. I think he should be the favorite. Now, I haven't done tape study. We weren't breaking down Bellator. I thought, like, on paper that Ryan Bader, and I know he's had some wars recently and he's, getting up there in age. I just always thought Corey Anderson was a good stylistic matchup. So my best bet of the evening, plus 140, Ryan Bader. That's my best bet. Make sure if you bet, please bet responsible. Make sure you take Ryan Bader in your bet, and also throw a $2 bid on a draw in the Jim Miller fight. But before we forget, I don't know if you saw this, but the newest member of Team Sherdog, Sean Sheehan, had a Bellator preview show. So if you want a much more in-depth show, head over to the YouTube page where you're watching this and check out that show.
Yes, we're very happy to welcome to the Sherdog Radio Network Sean Sheehan of Severe MMA. He is a veteran, outstanding journalist and analyst out of Ireland, and he'll be joining us with preview shows, interview shows. His debut for us this week was an interview with Ian Gary, a top Irish prospect who makes his debut at I think UFC 267 later this month, and then comprehensive breakdown of Bellator 268. So make sure to check that out if you want to hear an adorable accent and the wisdom of somebody who actually has done tape study on those fights. For us over here, we've done tape studying in these fights, and thank goodness it's over. And so is the Sherdog Radio preview for UFC Fight Night 195. Check out the fights, enjoy them. They're going head-to-head with Bellator, so we'll probably end up doing some kind of hybrid recap after the two of them. But yeah, if you don't know already, check us out on the Sherdog front page or just directly on the Sherdog YouTube page, as Keith and I will be doing a live recap probably after whichever main event ends last, but we'll keep you posted through the Sherdog social media accounts, where we'll talk about both cards, what was good, what was bad, what's next. The live chat is open then. We'll be taking your questions, comments, and hot takes. It's always a fun time. We're happy about the growing audience there and just the friends who come hang out with us. Speaking of friends coming and hanging out with us, it's good to be back, Keith. Certainly appreciate your analysis as always. That is Keith Schillen. I'm Ben Duffy. Thanks for listening. Enjoy the fights, and we'll talk to you on Saturday.